Welcome, everyone, to the Reader's Digest Book Club. I am your host, Tracy Nethercutt, and I am very excited for our first book club of 2024. I am joined today by Ashley Elston. She is the author of 6 YA novels and also the New York Times best-selling First Lie Wins, which is our January book club pick. So, Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited you are here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is probably one of my favorite and quickest read books of last year. I loved this book. I am so excited to talk to you about it. I am so excited to figure out how you wrote this book because it is full of twists. It is full of turns. And with that said, we're going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible.
Okay.
Just so that anyone who hasn't read it, and honestly, if you haven't read it, go pick it up now, read it and come back because I personally think the less you know about this book going in, the better, the more fun it is. So, but for those who need a little bit of information about it, can you give us just a very quick spoiler-free synopsis?
Yes. So First Lie Wins follows a woman named Evie who has worked for her mysterious boss for the last 10 years. She's a con artist. And so she kind of screwed up her last job. And so those past mistakes are kind of catching up with her a bit. And she has to kind of decide on the present job. Is she the one doing the job or is the job being done on her? It's about as vague as I can make it. It's very hard.
You want it to be vague. You do not want any more information. Because part of the fun of it is sort of following along and trying to unravel those threads and being wrong and then being wrong again. So that is what makes this book so fun. It's a little hard to talk about without giving away too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to go into how you constructed the story because it is, told from Evie's perspective, but we're also getting, segments of the book that are in the past. So we learn a little bit more about her. As with any con story, you set up multiple times for things to happen that we don't expect, her to intricately plot something. Is it going to fail? Is someone else going to have a more intricately plotted con? So how did you build this? I mean, are you like a major plotter where...
I'm not.
Really?
No. I have to have it in layers. So it's very similar to like my first draft is very bare bones. So let's say you have the skeleton, right? And the characters are very underdeveloped and I might not even describe what they look like. And somebody may be there and I don't really realize their potential until I get to the end. And then I'm like, oh, now that I kind of know where I'm going, this person can actually be more than this or, things like that. And so then my second draft is sort of like, you add the meat, you add the fat, you add the muscle, and you sort of start beefing everything up. And then, that third draft is, we're going to fine tune it and we're going to get everything kind of smooth and straight. But it's definitely like a build. It's like a layer, like a build.
How did you keep it all straight? Because there's a lot going on. I'm amazed that you didn't plot this like crazy for that first draft because there's just so much going on and so many people who are holding on to secrets and who have their own things. I'm trying to be vague, like who have their own plans and she has her own plans. And so
well, I mean, I rewrote the ending 7 times. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm like, that's not right. Let's back it up. It was who the bad guy really was. It was one of the main people at the end, what their role really was. It was Ryan, who he really was. I mean, like those things changed and some of them very significantly. And I'm talking like that didn't work, chop it off, start again. But I don't know that I could have gotten to that end result without writing it wrong first, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so I keep up with it. My publisher put a little video out. I think it's on their channels for under Viking, but because I brought it to New York and we did filmed a bunch of content. I have like an 8-foot piece of butcher paper and I have sticky notes and I have every chapter is a sticky note and the present day were one color and the flashbacks were another. And if I I had to sum up what was happening in that chapter on that sticky note. And if I couldn't, something wasn't right, I should be able to sum it up. And then I would keep track of like what day of the week it was, where I said they were, when do they learn about this?
Yeah, because that's
I
key.
knew I couldn't talk about it before then. If I said, well, she's driving from here to here in a certain amount of time, is that possible physically? So then I like, let me map it. Does that actually work? If there was something specific on like a real thing, like the Kentucky Derby, what time of the year is that? Does it match with the calendar I have for the book? And I don't do that paper until I've written a bare bones first draft. And then I go back and I start putting everything in. Then I can see where things aren't working or where I need things or where things need to change. But until then, I just sort of kind of give myself a lot of freedom. And then I come in and try to make sense of what I've done. And that's not a fun process. So
you kind of curse yourself for picking a con as opposed to like a really easy plot.
Yes. And the flashbacks, was not something I started out thinking I would have. So the first one I wrote was how she got her start. And I wrote it thinking it could potentially go in the book, or it could just potentially be a writing exercise for me to get to know my character better. It's kind of on the fence. Do I really want flashbacks? I don't know. Let me write this down. Let me see how it feels. And I liked it. And I was like, oh no, I'm kind of digging this. Right. And so then I was like, well, maybe I'll use that. And then I'm like, well, how else can then I use a flashback to help me with the present day? And so, that's how that started.
It's funny because so one of our book club members said, I usually do not like flashbacks when reading because it disrupts the narrative. But in this case, I enjoyed the flashbacks. The placement in the story was perfect and always continued the plot. Was it difficult using flashbacks? And I have to agree with that. I like how they sort of tied in. And was that kind of your point, especially as you're looking at that, timeline on your 8-foot long timeline?
Right.
That it has to have some purpose.
If it doesn't have a purpose, it cannot be there. And if it doesn't, if it doesn't elevate the story, it cannot be there. So that was sort of my thing, and then I would do one and I would think, well, it served its purpose, right? So let's say when she worked for somebody running for office, right? That served its purpose. But then I got later in the book and I was like, I can pull that back in. How can I pull that back in? And so that wasn't something I knew I would do until I got to a point where I was like, I might need somebody with a little bit of, a little bit of clout. Right. And so that's sort of how that worked. I like to think that I would have known all that. I would not. I feel like I'm a discovery writer. Like I discover as I go, and it just sort of works out. Does not always work out. It worked out.
Well, I liked that about it, that it tied into, the present day plot, which, obviously forwarded the plot and also added those things that she needed through people or whatever it is. But we also kind of got a better feel for who she is because, and if you haven't read the book, you may not realize you don't know who she is. There's this, I think it's in the back, the front flap, where it says, Evie Porter has everything a nice Southern girl could want: a doting boyfriend, a house with a white picket fence, a tight group of friends. The only catch, Evie Porter does not exist. Evie, I don't know. Evie Porter doesn't exist. And first off, that's all I needed to know. And I was like, I'm going to read that book tonight. But second, it's true. As a reader, you don't know anything about her, and you don't know what you're learning, especially at the beginning, if what you're learning is actually about her at all, or are you going to just pull the rug out from underneath us? So those flashbacks were really helpful just in like giving us more character development and background. So I loved it. And I agree with this reader. They were fun. They were just as fun to read as the main plot, which was,
and those were fun to write. That was some of my favorite parts to write.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice when you can, work on character development. Oh, and then use it in the book too.
Yes.
He gets to do double. So I want to ask you, because this, like I said before, this book is just full of so many twists and turns. Did anything, especially since you're one of those, discovery pantsing writers,
yes.
did anything surprise you, or, you know, without saying what the twist is, did any twists, you know, shock you as you were writing, or kind of?
I mean, a lot of them did,
Mhm.
because I was sort of treating it like I was the reader too, and then I'd be like, "Oh," but it was sort of different. It's not like the readers, like, I didn't see that coming. I look at it like, "Oh," like, I feel like a moment opened up where I can use something that I
Mhm.
didn't know I could use. And that was sort of exciting, because when I would get myself there, I'd be like, "Oh, what if I go back and pull so and so in and have them
Mhm.
come and do this, this, and this?" And so that was sort of my moment of surprise, to where I see an opening that I did not know would be there.
Mhm. Yeah, and pulling some of those things in, kind at least it made it feel more like twists. To
Right.
As a reader, you sort of think, "Oh my goodness, this whole time she's been doing this one thing." And this is probably not gonna make sense to anyone who hasn't read the book. Like, this whole time she's been doing this one thing, and she was really doing this other thing, and she completely fooled me. So yeah, those.
But it didn't, but see, it didn't start out like that. It started
Yeah.
out like, it was this, and she was
Mhm.
caught off guard. And I was like, "But what if she wasn't? I mean, what if it wasn't that?" You know? But it took me
Yeah.
writing a lot of it to get to where I could see the other path.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Just read the book if you haven't, and you will, and then you could come back and this will
this will
fully
all make
make sense
sense.
to you. So how did you then, was it just a matter of like revising, revising, revising? How did you make it so that it was sort of a satisfying end for the reader? Because I feel like one thing I struggle with thrillers is not guessing or anticipating how it's going to turn out. I kind of think to myself, well, if I were writing this, how would I do it? And then that ends up ruining the whole book. But I feel like there were so many, you know, gotcha moments and red herrings, and just, um, it was that satisfying at the end of, I didn't get it right, but this was inevitable. Like, looking back, this was how it was going to end, but I didn't get it right. And I feel like that's so much more satisfying than, I got it right in chapter 3. And,
Right.
you know,
Well, and
so how did you balance
that's
that?
it's a fine line, and I don't love plot twists that come out of nowhere, like completely
Right.
nowhere, like I didn't have a chance to figure it out. But I'm with you, like I really don't want to figure it out on chapter 3 either, because then I'm like, "Oh, okay, I got it. Oh, I was right, right?"
Yeah.
So it's a fine line, and a lot of that comes with having critique partners that read,
Mhm.
with fresh eyes, so that I can say, "Tell me where you think you know something," right?
Mhm.
Then your editors get involved, my agent gets involved, and it's just having a lot of very trusted readers kind of making sure that I'm pacing it the right way, and showing things in the right
Mhm.
time, and in the right way, and a lot of luck and crossing your fingers and hoping it works, right? Because once everybody's read it once, you don't have fresh eyes on
Right,
it.
right.
And
No,
so
but you're right that you don't want it to sort of be like, "Hey, this character that I never mentioned and never introduced, that's the
right,
bad guy."
right. And
I
that's
always feel like those are
honestly, that is how the bad guy was at first. It
really?
was
Okay.
and then we were all like, not satisfying." And
Yeah.
then we changed that to somebody else, and it was better. It wasn't
Mhm.
right. And then I changed it. I mean, we had sold the book, I had gone through my first round of edits with my editor, and she had sent her notes back. And I called my agent, and I was like, "Don't kill me, but I think I'm changing who the bad guy is." And she was like, "Wait, talk me through it." And I started talking her through it, and she was like, "Okay, I totally see it." I was like, "Is Pam gonna be okay with that?" Because like, we're in like, round one. And she's like,
Yeah.
"No, it'll be fine. The book will be better for it." But I mean, it even took me to that point to say it still wasn't quite right. And so then when I made that change, I was like, "Nope, that's it. That's right. I feel that one.
In your
And that
gut.
one
Yeah.
works. And that's what it is." And so hard to talk about without saying what it is.
Yes, it is. I loved, well, I'm glad you did make that change, because I loved the ending, and that's all I'll say there.
Yeah.
Um No more there. But so okay, I know what everyone always wants to know. How did you come up with the idea for this? Where was that original beginning of an idea? And was it, I mean, was this something that was in your mind for a while, or did it come and you just ran with that fast?
I was a photographer for years before I started writing. I did a
Mhm.
lot of wedding photography and some portraits, but mostly weddings, and very visual. I like to see the scene kind of in my head before I write it. And I had that opening dinner party scene in my head. And I just saw the table, I saw the people sitting around it, and I wasn't real sure what it was, but I just kept thinking about it. I kept picturing it. And then I started building the conversation in my head. What would they say? Well, what if somebody was there up to no good? What if they were
Mhm.
just lying? I mean, like, what if it was like I'm trying to break into a friend group that's tight
Mhm.
knit and doesn't really love an outsider? I mean, like, and so as I start thinking about it, I'm like, well, let me just write that scene. And so I wrote that scene, and I was like, I don't know what this is yet, but I really like it. I like the feel of it. It was definitely not YA, which was what I
Mhm.
had been writing, and I was like, well, okay, not YA, but that's okay too, because I had written 4 mystery thriller YAs and then wrote these rom-coms that kind of came out of nowhere. And so I was like, treat it just like I treated that. I'm not real sure that that's where I need to be going, but let's see where
Yeah.
it takes me. And so I just said, okay, well, what if they did this next? And then I wrote the next scene. And then I got to the apartment scene, and I was like, how can I make that not what you think that is? Right.
Mhm.
And so still, I'm like, not real sure who she is. Is she good? Is she bad? Is she somebody good trying to be bad? Is she somebody bad trying to be good? You know? And so I did that long enough to know that I had something there that I thought was special. And then I was like, now I need to try to figure out exactly what I'm trying to do. But I just gave myself that freedom to be like, let's discover who she is
Yeah.
while she's here.
Yeah. And I love her character. I want to get into her character a bit because, well, not even just her, not but a lot or most, I should say, of your characters are really walking the line between are they good, are they bad? I mean, granted, you don't know
Mhm.
for a good portion of the time, but when you do know, you realize that a lot of these are like very morally gray,
Mhm.
which I love a
You
good
too.
morally gray character. I love a good villain.
Yeah.
But how did you, or was it difficult for you to write these characters in a way where you knew that readers are going to root for them regardless of whether they do something bad or lots of bad things?
Yeah, yeah, I love them too. I mean, one of my, obviously there have been lots of books with morally gray characters, but one of the first, or I guess maybe one of the most impactful books that I was like, you know what, I hated her, but I loved her was Gone Girl, right? Like
Mhm.
hated her, but loved her. And she was pretty ruthless, right? So, that sort of kind of opens that door of like, I
Mhm.
mean, maybe we'll just go there with it. Let's just see what happens. I I liked writing Evie because you show why she started, and it was for good reason. She needed money for good reason, and this is what she had to do to get it. Then she discovered she was good at it. She was a good con artist, and she was unapologetically good at it. And it was almost like she was going to climb her own corporate ladder, um, even if it was an illegal one, and that was okay. But she still had the lines that she would not cross.
Yeah.
She may not be your lines, but they were hers. And there were some things that she do and some things that she wouldn't do. I also think it's sort of a little bit like everybody's okay with Robin Hood, right? Because
Yeah.
as long as you hurt the bigger,
Right.
badder guy,
Right.
okay with it. Don't go hurt somebody less or smaller, weaker, poorer, but you hurt hurt the big guy who's not that nice either. I'm gonna let that slide. So there's some of that in there that I think people are willing to be like, wasn't right, but they probably deserved it, so it was fine.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And also, I think sort of if you're reading a book that's like either a con or a heist or something like that, you kind of know you're going in rooting for the
Mhm.
not the bad guys, but not the good
Not
guys.
the good guys either.
You kind of know that and prime yourself a bit for,
Yes, yes.
um, you know, they are not going to be playing by the rules, and that's in this
That's
fictional
okay.
universe, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it's fiction, it's fine.
yeah, yeah. Was she your favorite character, to write in the book, or
You know
is
what?
there?
I loved the flashback parts. Those were
Mhm.
fun. Those were like writing little mini short story kind of
Mhm.
things. I enjoyed those. I enjoyed Ryan. I mean, he was hard because you know, he had a purpose, right? But you don't want him to be a total doormat because, you know, she's kind of she's a big personality in her own way, but you need him to sort of be big on his own as well, but not the same. I don't know. He was fun to write too.
Now,
Getting
Ryan is the man that she maybe, you know,
He's the mark.
set
You know,
up.
she's up on a
Right.
job. She's in the middle of a job. He is her mark. And her job is to get very close to him. And he believes that they had this meet cute and they are together and dating and in love. And that may or may not be true.
And she is, you think, I mean, well,
So
they are like they're dating, and you are the entire beginning, or we'll say the whole book, you know, thinking to yourself, this poor man, is she like breaking his heart? And so, yeah, I mean, it's easy to start out. I
right.
guess I'm trying to talk
But then
very
you think, you know, well, is he a mark because he's
right.
completely, you know, just gullible and has got something to lose, or is he a mark because he's not who he says he is either?
Yes,
And
I'm
that, you know, so hard to talk. Yeah.
trying not to like talk too much about that situation there.
Yes.
But it is. I like how you did that, and you sort of very, very quickly like him. But it's not without like raising questions of that relationship, I guess. Um, if I haven't said it before, go read the book and then come back.
Okay.
Because there are just so many instances of, you know, you think you know what's going on, but you do not. And so, yeah, we're getting very vague here, but that is for the benefit of anyone who's watching this. So backing up from the characters, because now I see that that's sort of like a landmine question to talk about right now. So not to make assumptions, but assuming that you have never been a con artist before,
No.
where did all of those elements, some of the, you know, what you really think of as like the fun parts of reading or watching a con, where did all of those things come from? Just imagination, or did you do research to figure out, you know?
I mean, some of it, the imagination. Like I loved Ocean's 11, you know, and I mean, I've watched all those kind of shows, and not that it's a con artist, but I loved Alias. I loved how she would have a new identity each time, and I loved all that. You know, so to me, in my mind, you have things that are like your typical cons, which are, I have some of those. You know, is there going to be an art heist? Is there going to be, you know, something that you would think of when you think, what's a con? But then I thought, I want something different. I mean, something that is not typically associated with a con. And I have 3 sons, and they, you know, range from, you know, my oldest is 23, my youngest is 15. And so, you know, we always have some sort of sporting event on TV, you know, but we watch a lot of football. My boys love a lot of football. And I started watching football because I wanted to watch with my boys. And so, you know, and I found that I loved it too. And so we go to games, and, you know, my kids went to Ole Miss, and, you know, we've been to all that college games. And there was something that came out when my oldest son started Ole Miss. They were in a bowl band, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And
I don't
basically,
know.
so they had gotten in trouble with how they were recruiting, and the punishment from the NCAA was that they could not, even if they had a great winning record for the season, they could not go to a bowl game at the end of the season. And I was like, I mean, is that really like a bad punishment? And my kids were like, oh, it's the worst. I mean, like, that's how you get paid, you know, the money, and it's the TV. And then I'm start like looking at like how much money goes into like college football and the TV and the endorsement. I mean, everything. And so I was like, well, anything that has this much money, it's just ripe for fraud, right? It is. So then I start doing a deep dive into all of the ways you can really screw up. And there's a lot. And so then I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's going to have to do with college football, because this is like chaos. chaos.
Yeah.
And the group that enforces it have power but don't have power. I mean, like, it's just such an odd system. Anyway, so there's a football con in there because I just thought, well, this is fascinating to me.
Yep.
It's fascinating to somebody else.
Well, and I don't know anything about, college football, but I loved that aspect of it, and especially how later you brought that back. These aren't sort of like one-off short stories where you're learning about her and her past, but like you said before, you can pull from them in the future.
Yeah. So I got towards the end, and I was like, I really need something here that is going to help her. And then I was like, well, what if I go back here and pull this little fella, that you think you're done with? Not saying too much.
Yeah.
Well,
she kind of has she has a team. It's not so much, in the high structure where you're assembling the team and working together, but, because she largely works alone, and that's part of the mystery. But she does have these people that she's connected with.
It's like found family.
Yeah.
And that's really all she wants to be connected. She wants some sort of, like, I don't want you to work for me. I want you to work with me. I want us to be together. I want to feel like I have, my people who are my people. And she sort of collects them as she goes. And
well, and that kind of helps with her character too. Like, if you're ever on the fence of like, is she doing the right thing? But then you see these people around her who support her and like her and value her skills and stuff. That kind of, like you said, Robin Hood mentality. If this person is, fighting the bad guys and also has people looking at him like you are doing a good thing, it sort of endears you to them.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was hoping for. So
yeah, I do want to say, because she's really, really smart. And throughout, she's, 10 steps ahead, and other characters are also 10 steps ahead or 10 steps ahead of her. So was that really difficult to write? Because obviously you are smarter than your characters because you are giving them life. Was it hard to write someone who is so crafty and detailed and intricate in her cons?
It is hard to keep track of. I think there's something to be said. I mean, like, when you would do those mazes as a kid, right, with your pencil, you could always start at the end and work your way back, and it's much easier to do, right? Because you see the turns because you're working backwards. That's why I think whenever I write that bare bones first draft and I have a general sense of what that maze looks like, then it's almost like I can now work backwards because I know where I'm trying to go. And they may not see it here, but I know it. So it's sort of that helps, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's once you see the end, it's easier to backtrack and come at it from the back.
And sort of build in those little.
Yes. And like, I need something here. Yeah. What do I need here? Well, I have this here. So it's not good. It's just easier.
Your mind is a maze and you're working around.
Yes.
Don't try to understand it.
Well, and that's why the first draft is really very messy. There's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot of things to fix, a lot of unknowns, but it's the bare bones. And if I can get there, I can work myself back. It's sort of how I treat it.
Hey, it worked. So,
I would have never written this the first time the way it is. I would have just never been able to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure as you wrote that first draft, you're just like the act of imagining it all up kind of sparked ideas here and there that you can use later.
And you cannot be afraid to make a change, and even if it's a drastic one. And I think a lot of writers, and I struggle with that too, because you fall in love with a particular thing. It's not quite working, but I still love it. Okay, well, it's got to go. It's just dead weight. And so there's a lot of freedom that comes with saying this does not work, so therefore it's got to go.
Yeah. Well, and you said you wrote the ending 7 times, was it?
7 different. Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot, and I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, changing the ending is not just, oh, rewrote the last chapter.
And
I mean, that's a ripple effect.
I say change the ending. I changed who the bad guy was 3 different times. I changed who the very important person at the end, what that was, two, maybe 3 times. And then I changed something else. I mean, like, it was all had to do with the ending, but no, it all bleeds back up back to the front.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because then all of your previous foreshadowing is
wrong.
Doesn't matter. So, yeah, that's a lot of rewriting and getting rid of some darlings that you probably really loved, but not
sometimes it has to happen, you know.
Yep. I want to make sure I have time for reader questions, but first, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your trajectory getting here. So, there is so much buzz about this book, and I will show it again because it's a very fun cover. It was a New York Times bestseller, which is amazing. It was a Reese's Book Club pick, a Book of the Month selection. There is a Hulu
Reader's Digest Book Club pick.
Exactly. So I mean, like, this is like writing dreams coming true. And it kind of, I feel like when this kind of thing happens, people tend to think like, oh my goodness, overnight success. But you have written 6 YA novels beforehand. Did you think that did you ever anticipate this for your first adult novel? Because it's a big change to go from writing YA to like a completely different category. And
no, there's nobody more surprised to be sitting here than me. I promise you. I mean, is it a dream to hit the New York Times when you start writing? Absolutely. Does it feel like a dream that's a possibility? No, it feels like a long shot, right? And then when you start getting things like, I got y'all's book club, and then I got the Reese one, and then you get Book of the Month, and then I'm like, I didn't know you could get more than, get more than one, you know? And so, no, it's all just, and every time I think that I can't be more blown away, I am. Something else happens. I'm like, I am now more blown away. And I didn't think that was possible. So yeah, it's been, I started writing in 2011, seriously writing and sold my first book, and it came out in 2013. So I mean, it's, I've been in this business a while, and everybody's like, you're new, you're a debut. I'm like, I am, but I'm not. I've been here a while, so it's just, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know however many words to use. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all of it very well deserved, because the book is just so good and so fun to read. I have to say, it's funny because the first book of yours I ever read, where'd you say it was like 2013? This Rules for Disappearing, way back when, like a decade ago now. I read that and loved it. And it's funny because I think back, and granted, it was, a decade ago, but part of what I loved about that is part of what I loved about here. You've got like someone who's not who they say they are, dealing with those issues of identity, a super, super high concept plot and fast pace. I mean,
I love identity. Like, I don't go reinvent the wheel every time. I mean, you will see sort of reoccurring themes in all my books because I love sort of mismatched, oh, you think it's them, but no, it's them. Like, I do love that. So, but yeah, that my first book was about a girl in the witness protection program. So it's, again, all about identity and who are you really? And you're having to say somebody that you're not, again, for totally different reasons and in a totally different situation. But I love that. I love that.
She's saying she's someone else to this boy, which felt very like her and Ryan, obviously completely different circumstances, but and very different characters. But yeah, I read this, and because I remembered your name from that, and I read this and I was like, oh my goodness, like these themes obviously are things that you find enjoyable to.
I do. I do. I mean, I've come back to identity in several other books. I think it's just it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. Yeah.
I mean, and it's really fun combined with this kind of plot. Like, just let's be serious. Like, whether you're reading or watching it, something like that, where you as the reader know that this person isn't who they're saying they are, and just waiting for that moment when that reveal happens. I know you mentioned Alias, which I was a massive fan of too, and just waiting for those people in her life to finally realize who she was. I mean, it's just fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. I do. I really do love that. So,
one of our members has said, just in relation to your YA books, I'd be interested to learn if she approaches her work differently when writing for adults versus young adults, and what those differences are. So obviously, different audiences, different ages, but aside from like
my process is the same. My process is the same. I didn't find that I did it. I mean, it's my first adult book. I don't find that I did anything different in terms of, let me write this bare bones. Let me go back through. Let me go back through. I do the same with all those books. And, I don't do anything different.
Is it easier to get in the head of the character or the mindset of someone? I can't remember exactly how old Evie is, but she's obviously not a teenager.
Like late 20s. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know that I had, a house full of kids when I was writing YA.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have a 15-year-old. So I would say it's harder to get into the head of a teenager because, I mean, I just turned 50. I mean, those were a long time. But I'm around that age a lot because I have those kids. But, being around it and being one not the same, and being a teenager now and being a teenager when I was a teenager, very, very, very different. So honestly, I think writing as a teen, like the teen voice, is probably a little bit harder because I think there's more chance of getting it wrong. Yeah. And if anybody's going to let you know you got it wrong, it's a teenager. I mean, nobody does that. Nobody says that. Nobody talks like that. I mean, my kids will be the first one to be like, Mom, nobody says that. Nobody says that, And I think you have a little bit more leeway with the adults because, I mean, adults, a 30-year-old and a 45-year-old are different, but not different. I mean, you still may have a mortgage. You still may have to get to that job. I mean, there's still a lot of the same circumstances. Yeah. In that big of an age gap. That is nothing like a teen. So
that makes sense. Someone else asked, do you intend to do more adult thrillers?
Yeah, I think so. I have an idea for something.
I think it's worked out for you.
It's worked out. Stay here a minute. I have an idea for another book. I'm in that very early stages where I'm discovering what's happening. I'm letting a lot of things marinate right now, but it is adult. It's adult thriller. I'm liking it. I'm feeling the vibe of it. Yeah. So
Can you say at all what it's about, or is it still top secret?
I don't really know 100% what it's about yet. I will tell you, I was sort of obsessed with watching the Murdaugh trial stuff. Did you watch any of that?
No, but I watched the Netflix documentary on it.
Okay. Yes. The part that was amazing to me was like when he was in trial at court or whatever, and they were like, they could tell from his phone. They could tell that he walked in a circle for 38 steps while he talked for 2 minutes and 37 seconds. And I was like, the pinpoint accuracy of where he was, who he was talking to, the duration was like amazing to me. And it started making me think like, if you really needed an alibi, you don't really need a person. You just need somebody to go take your data and do your data the way you would. You need your car to drive to the store that you drive to and buy the things that you would buy and tip the way you would tip. I mean, like if you were saying I need a day, you don't really need somebody that looks like you. You need somebody that's going to act like you with your data, because they would say, did you see her at the store? No, but she was there. She bought this. She always buys that. She always, and that sort of overrules the, well, I didn't see her, because that data is
right. If you're tracking someone through all of their tech.
Now I'm kind of obsessed with like how you could actually use that against the system.
I like how your brain works. It's like, how can I turn this into a crime?
Yeah. So like, if I know they can track me like that, how am I going to use that in my benefit? Is where I am in my very vague, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I like that. It sounds like, another
it works out.
Yes. Another morally gray character potentially. But fun.
Yes.
So aside from that, what's ahead for you? I mentioned before, but in case anyone doesn't know, First Lie Wins was optioned for a series from Hulu. So are you involved in that in any way, or is that?
I am executive producer, but I don't really know what that means. No, I am. They are lovely. I love everybody involved. I have such a great group that are a part of this. We have Octavia Spencer's production company attached to it. We have Krista Burnoff, her production company. She is actually writing some of the episodes with another writer, Megan Plunkett, and they are amazing. Like, I've read the screenplay for the pilot, and it is so good, and it's so true to the story, but still elevated for television in the way that it would need to be elevated. And everybody's very enthusiastic and very hopeful, and I don't really know. That's such a mystery to me how that side of things work. And I'm hearing that we're all still moving forward. What does that mean exactly? I don't really know. I'm waiting for some calls, but yeah, I don't know. But it feels promising. It feels good.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy.
Having the rights option for film isn't necessarily guaranteed for something.
Not at all.
But this feels a bit more concrete.
It feels a bit further than typical because of the parties involved and how far they've gotten. We've written something, and it I don't know. It feels good. I'm hopeful. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I for sure will be watching that. Definitely up my alley, especially after reading it. So I have a few remaining member questions I want to make sure with you. So one member said, I love origami, so I was impressed when Evie left origami swans after each job was completed. How did that come about? Do you have a personal connection to origami?
No, I don't. I think it's cool. I can't do it. I've tried, and they look terrible. And I was like, I've got to master the swan. At least I have not mastered the swan. I've tried a couple times, but again, it was one of those things that I put in that first flashback with the mom, and then I was like, I like the imagery of that, right? And so she had them all above her bed, but then how can I use that? And so then when I got to the point where showing Evie's past jobs where she's feeling like a ghost, right? Feeling like I don't really exist because nobody really knows. They may know this version of me or this version of me or this. This was a little something to leave behind to be like, I was here.
Yeah.
Even if it gets brushed away and thrown away or whatever, it was sort of just a little something physical to say, you may not really know who I am, but I was here. And it's her struggle with her identity and her place and things. And so then I just was like, okay, this is great. It's like her calling card.
It felt kind of Scarlet Pimpernel-ish because, you've got the whole hidden identity thing and the leaving behind of something automatically made me think of that.
Yeah. It was just a little fun, something to, I wanted it to be fun. It's kind of a little fun thing. She could fold it up, put it in her pocket, somebody called her with it. It's just a piece of paper, it's,
doesn't give you away. Yeah.
Doesn't give you away.
Another member said, I have never heard the expression First Lie Wins before. Did you write it for the book or is it something you grew up with? I love this title. So where did that come from?
Okay. So titles are hard. And so when you start trying to find a title, you start Googling like lying, phrases with lying, anything to sort of hoping something jumps out at you. And it's like, oh no, that's the perfect title. So when I was doing that, I ran across an article about the show Catherine the Great that I had not seen. So in it, Catherine battles a pretty horrible rumor about her. I'll let you Google it and say what it is. It's not a nice one, but she can't get ahead of it, even though that it's sort of ridiculous. And why would anybody believe it? Somebody said it with enough confidence and conviction for it to be believable. And I'm paraphrasing from the article, but in the show, they said something like, and it's an old saying. It's an old saying, the first lie wins, or the first lie is the strongest, or however they said it. But they said it something like, you can't hardly beat it when it comes out because it's the first thing people believe. And then you're fighting that. And I just loved the idea of that. I love the idea. And it's so true that if you say something, even if it's ridiculous, but you say it strong enough and with confidence and with conviction, people believe you. and then it's harder to prove that it's not true than it being true. So
yeah,
that's really where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, I love that show, and it does seem true, like politically for her, where that first lie won, but even just like in modern day.
If you have the biggest microphone and the loudest voice, and you say it with absolute conviction, people are like, "Yeah," you're like, "Really?
That's the case." I mean, like then it becomes possibly not a lie. So, I thought that was a great title. Plus, it it kind of just looks really nice, all lined up.
It does. Well.
Okay, so the last member question I'll ask is, did you ever lie about something as a kid or teenager? And did the theme of lying influence your writing in this book?
Well,
I would be surprised if anyone was a teenager who didn't lie about anything.
I'm pretty much, I think if I was talking, I was probably lying as a teenager. And then having kids, my kids would say something, I'll be like, I mean, I know you're lying. I mean, like, I just think you test those boundaries and what can I get away with? And thinking that, oh, if she learns the truth, if your mother learns the truth, you're dead. She's going to kill you, whatever. But yeah, I mean, so I think I was probably like any other teenager. I like to say that I probably don't lie now, right? But as a teenager, probably. Yeah, I'm sure. I know I did. I think all teens do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, before we go, since we are a book club and we enjoy reading, what are some books that you've been reading recently that you think everyone just needs to go pick up now? Or if you're reading some that are coming out?
I'm reading. They're sending me some to read that are coming out soon. And I read Kara Thomas that has a book coming out in March called Lost to Dune Road, which is fantastic. I loved everything about it. So good. And then Megan Miranda's new book. I love all her books, but Daughter of Mine is really, really, really good. I think it comes out in April. And then another friend of mine, Ella Cosmano, writes the Finley Donovan books, and those are fun. You talk about fun. Those are fun. She's got a new one coming out. I think it's March as well. So I've been loving all those recently.
So lots to add to our reading lists. So thank you. Well, I won't keep you any longer, but I know that I am not the only one who is excited to hear about your process for this book and how it came about and everything going on. And I am also not the only one who is going to be, rushing to pick up the next one when that discovery is done and it is in and on shelves. So for those of you who made it this far and don't realize it, first lie wins. Definitely go pick this up. Ashley, where can interested people find out more about you, about your books or what you're working on?
My website is really up to date. They do a great job, keeping that up to date. It says AshleyElston.com. Instagram is probably the best place. I'm probably there the most. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but I gravitate towards Instagram probably for the pictures and the photography background. So, but any of them, but mostly Instagram. And I'm just at Ashley Elston there as well.
Nice and easy to remember.
Yeah.
Yes. So everyone go pick up this book. It is so much fun. And I promise that you should not read the back cover or the cover flap copy. Just dive right in. And do not do it when you have to be somewhere in, any amount of time after you've started. So Ashley, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been so much fun talking with you. And I just hope, good luck on that next one you're writing. And, we will
Thank you so much. Thank y'all so much for picking this as your book club for January. I mean, amazing honor for me. I'm so happy that y'all picked it. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And for everyone else, we will be reading Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame for February. So pick up the book. And until then, happy reading.